For this lesson, you need to open the file Transactions14 from your Sample Files folder. In this lesson, you'll learn how to group by date. Out of all of the skills covered in my Classroom Expert Skills course, this is surely the star of the show. Excel's ability to summarize transactional data by monthly totals is extremely difficult to achieve without a pivot table. In previous versions of Excel, this feature was so well hidden that most Excel users didn't even know it was there. Things are a little better with the new ribbon interface, but it's still a feature that most Excel users miss entirely. I'm going to begin by clearing the pivot table to start with a brand new empty pivot table. And to do that, I click Options in the Pivot Table Tools group, then in the Actions group, Clear and Clear All, and all filters and all fields are removed from the pivot table. Now I'd like a list of all employees, so I take the Employee field and drag it down into the Row Labels box. For each employee, I'd like to see the cash sales, so I take the Total field and I drag it down into the Values list box. And instead of seeing simply a total sales figure for all sales, I'd like to group these by date, so I'll take the Order Date field and drop it into the Column Labels list. Sales are now summarized by day, but it's much more likely you'll want to show sales by week, or by month, or by quarter, or by year. So let's now show the monthly sales for each employee. To do that, I need to right-click on any date field. The date fields are all shown up there in row 5. So I'll right-click on cell C5. And from the shortcut menu, I'll choose Group. The grouping dialog now appears, allowing me to group by many different intervals. You'll notice that months is selected by default. I can click on months to deselect it and choose to group, for example, by quarters. But I want to group by months. Now, it's really important that whenever you group by months, you always also group by years. Because if you didn't do that, you'd get October 2007, 2008 and 2009 all grouped into a single cell called October. And that's probably not what you want at all. When I click OK, the pivot table is now grouped by year and by month. Notice that this outline can be collapsed. So if I'm only interested in the annual sales, I would right-click any of the year fields and then expand collapse and collapse entire field to see the annual sales for each employee. And to expand it again, right-click on any date, expand collapse, and expand entire field. My next task is to filter this pivot table so that only sales for January, February, and March 2009 are shown. This is surprisingly easy. I scroll to the right so that I can see the January, February, and March 2009 columns, and then select cells Q5 down to S6. Now it's really important that I chose Q5 to S6 and not simply Q6 to S6, because if I didn't, I'd see all of the January totals for all years in one single result in my filtered results. And that probably isn't what you want at all. I now right-click on any of the selected cells and choose Filter and Keep Only Selected Items. If I now scroll to the left, you can see that I'm now viewing only sales for January, February, and March 2009. All that remains now is to save your work, and I'll save it with the new name Transactions15, and as usual, I'll save it to the folder above my Sample Files folder. I click the Save button and we're done.